Augustinus Vox presents Against the Skeptics, Book 1, written by Saint Augustine, published in the Patrologia Latina by Jacques-Paul Migne, translated by Kyle Paulson. O Romanianus, if only virtue could take a person away from hostile fortune as easily as fortune refuses to let anyone take a person away from her, by now she would have laid hold of you, declared you to be hers, and led you into the secure possession of true goods, refusing to let you be a servant even to favorable luck. But since things are arranged as either our deserts or the necessities of nature require, so that the human soul, divine as it is, won't reach the harbor of wisdom by standing still when fortune blows against us, or even when she seems to blow with us, unless fortune herself, whether in fair weather or in what looks like foul, brings us there. Nothing is left for me to do on your behalf except pray and try to obtain from the God who cares for these things that he give you back to yourself. If he does that, he will easily give you back to us as well, and he will allow that mind of yours, which has long been struggling for breath, to at last rise into the air of true freedom. In fact, what people usually call fortune may be ruled by a hidden order, and we call something chance only when the reason and cause are hidden. Nothing happens, pleasant or painful, in one part that does not fit and agree with the whole. Philosophy promises to show this truth to her true lovers. She proclaims it in the oracles of the richest teachings, though it is far removed from the understanding of the uninitiated, and to this I invite you. So when many things happen to you that your own heart cannot accept, don't despise yourself. If divine providence truly reaches down even to us, and there is no doubt that it does, believe me, it is right that you are being dealt with as you are. For when, with that remarkable natural gift of yours that I always admire, you entered human life at the start of youth, when your reason was still weak and your steps unsteady, life full of every kind of error received you. A flood of wealth surrounded you and began to swallow you with seductive whirlpools as you eagerly chased what looked beautiful and honorable at that age into that mind. If the blasts of fortune, those thought to be adverse, had not snatched you out while you were almost drowning, you would have been lost. Just think, if the theater's loud applause had always welcomed you whenever you put on games with bears and spectacles never before seen in our city, if you had been carried up to the skies by the shouts of foolish people, and that crowd is immense, if no one had dared to oppose you, if the municipal records had engraved your name in bronze as patron not only of your own citizens, but even of neighboring towns, if statues were set up, honors poured in, and powers were added that went beyond the local rank, if lavish tables were spread every day at banquets, if whatever was needed, and even what luxury thirsts for, could be asked for and taken without hesitation, with many gifts lavished even on those who didn't ask, if your household affairs were carefully and faithfully managed by your own people so that your estate could meet such expenses, if meanwhile you lived among the most exquisite buildings, gleaming baths, respectable gaming tokens, hunts, feasts, and on the lips of clients, citizens, and even whole peoples, being praised as the most courteous, most generous, most refined, most fortunate, as you once were, who would have dared even to mention to you another kind of happy life, the only truly happy one? Who could have persuaded you not only that you were not truly fortunate, but that you were most miserable precisely where you seemed to yourself least so? Now, however, how briefly have the many hardships you have endured managed to admonish you. You don't need the examples of others to be persuaded how shifting, fragile, and full of troubles are all the things mortals consider good, since you have experienced this well enough yourself, well enough that we can use your case to persuade others. So let that thing in you, the part that has always desired what is noble and honorable, the part that would rather be generous than rich, the part that has never wanted to be more powerful than just, the part that never gave way to adversity or to wicked men. Let that very thing in you, which is divine but was lulled to sleep by some drowsiness in this life, be awakened now by these various hard tossings through the secret plan of Providence. Wake up, I beg you. Believe me, you will be very grateful that so few of the worldly prosperities by which the unwary are trapped have flattered you with their gifts. Those very songs were trying to capture me daily. until pain in my chest forced me to throw off my windy public career and flee into the arms of philosophy. She now nourishes and cherishes me in the leisure I longed for. She has freed me completely from that superstition into which I had dragged you headlong along with me. She teaches, truly teaches, that nothing visible to mortal eyes, and nothing touched by any bodily sense, should be worshipped at all, and that all such things ought to be despised. She promises to show clearly the most true and most hidden God, and even now begins to display him, as it were, through shining clouds. Licentius, our friend, now lives with me most diligently in this pursuit. He has turned away from all youthful enticements and pleasures so completely that I hardly dare set him forth, for his father to imitate philosophy is a mother whose breasts no age will complain of being shut out from. To spur you to hold and drink from her more eagerly, even though I know your thirst, I wanted to send you a taste, something sweet, and, if I may say so, an enticing starter. I've sent you a written account of the debate between Trigetius and Licentius. That young man, too, who had taken up a little military training, as if to scrub off his distaste for the disciplines, has been restored to us as a most ardent and ravenous lover of great and honorable studies. A few days after we began living in the countryside, when I encouraged and stirred them toward study, and saw them readier and more eager than I had hoped, I wanted to test what they could do at their age, especially since Cicero's book Hortensius seemed already to have greatly reconciled them to philosophy. So I brought in a notary so the breeze wouldn't scatter our effort, and I let nothing be lost. In this book you will read their points and arguments, and also my words and Alypius's. When we had all gathered at my urging in a suitable place, I asked, "Do any of you doubt that we ought to know the truth?" "Not at all," said Trigetius, and the rest signaled their agreement with their faces. "What if," I asked, "we could be happy even without grasping the truth? Do you think grasping it is necessary?" Alypius said, "I think it's safer for me to be a judge in this question. Since I have to travel to the city, I should be spared the burden of taking a side. Besides, it's easier to delegate the role of judge than that of a partisan, so don't expect me to argue for either side." Everyone agreed, and I repeated the question. Trigetius said, "We certainly want to be happy. If we can reach that goal without truth, then truth need not be sought." I asked, "What about this? Can we be happy even if we never find the truth?" Licentius replied, "We can if we seek the truth." I looked for the others' views. Navigius said, "What Licentius said moves me. Perhaps this itself is the happy life, to live in the search for truth." Trigetius said, "Then define happy life so I can judge how to answer." I said, "What else is living happily but living according to what is best in a human being?" He answered, "I won't throw out words at random. You should define for me what that best thing is." I said, "Who would doubt that the best in a human is that part of the soul to which everything else in the person ought to submit? And if you want no other definition, this can be called mind or reason. If you don't agree, then define for yourself either the happy life or the best part of a human." He said he agreed. "So," I continued, "to return to the point, do you think one can live happily without finding the truth, provided one only seeks it?" "I repeat my earlier view," he said, "not at all." "And you all?" I asked. Licentius said, "I think one can. Our ancestors, whom we have received as wise and happy, lived well and happily by that alone. They sought the truth." "Thanks," I said, "for making me judge along with Alypius," something I was starting to envy him for. "Since one of you thinks the happy life comes from seeking truth alone, and the other that it comes only from finding truth, and since Navigius just showed he wants to be on your side, Licentius, I'm keen to see what kind of defenders of your positions you can be. It's a big question, and deserves careful examination." Licentius said, "If it's a big matter, it needs great men." "Don't look," I replied, "especially in this little farm, for what's hard to find anywhere. Just explain why you said what you did, and on what reasoning it seems right to you. Great matters often make small people grow." He said, "Since you press us to argue against each other, and I trust you want this for our good, why can't someone be happy while seeking truth even if he never finds it?" Trigetius said, because we want the happy person to be a wise person, perfected in all things. Someone who is still seeking is not perfected. So how can you claim such a person is happy? Licentius asked, Does the authority of the ancients carry any weight with you? Trigetius answered, Not of all of them. Of which then? Of those who were wise. So you don't think Carneades was wise? I'm no Greek, he said. I don't know who this Carneades was. What about our Cicero? What do you think of him? After a long pause, he said, He was wise. Then does his view on this question carry weight for you? It does, he said. Then hear it, said Licentius. I think you've forgotten. Cicero held that the one who seeks truth is happy, even if he cannot reach the discovery of it. Where did Cicero say this? Who doesn't know? Licentius replied, that he strongly affirmed that nothing can be fully grasped by humans, and that nothing remains for the wise person except the most diligent search for truth. Because if he were to give his assent to uncertain things, even if by chance they were true, he could not be freed from error, and that is the greatest fault in a wise person. Therefore, if the wise must be happy, and if the search for truth is the complete task of wisdom, why hesitate to think that the happy life can come from the search for truth itself? May I go back, said Trigetius, to what I granted too quickly? I said, I don't usually allow that to those who argue not from a desire to find the truth, but from childish vanity. But with me, especially since you're still to be nourished and brought up, not only do I allow it, I even want you to have it as a rule. You ought to return and examine what you carelessly conceded. Licentius added, I count it no small progress in philosophy when the victory of argument is despised compared to finding what is right and true. So I gladly agree and allow Trigetius to revisit what he thinks he conceded rashly. It's my case, after all. Alypius said, You see that I haven't yet taken up any role here, but since my planned trip forces me to break off, my co-judge will kindly take double power until I return, for I see this contest will go long. When he left, Licentius said, Bring up what you conceded rashly. Trigetius said, I rashly granted that Cicero was wise. So Cicero wasn't wise, the man through whom philosophy and Latin was both begun and completed? Even if I concede he was wise, he said, I don't approve of everything he said. Then you'll have to refute many other things of his, so you don't seem shameless in rejecting this point under debate. What if I'm prepared to affirm only this one thing he didn't judge rightly? I don't care, Licentius said, as long as I bring forward reasons strong enough to prove what I intend. Go on, Trigetius said. What could I do against a man who declares himself Cicero's opponent? Pay attention, said Trigetius to me as judge, to how you earlier defined the happy life. You said the happy person is the one who lives according to that part of the soul that ought to rule the rest. Now, Licentius, I want you to grant me, even now, since I have shaken off the yoke of authority into the freedom that philosophy promises us, that the person who is still seeking truth is not perfected. After a long silence, Licentius said, I don't grant it. Why not? Explain. I'm eager to hear how someone can be both perfected and still seeking truth. Licentius said, I admit that a person who hasn't reached the end is not perfected, but I think only God knows that truth, or perhaps a human soul when it has left this body, this dark prison. As for a human's end, it is to seek the truth perfectly. We are looking for a perfect seeker, but still a human. Then a human cannot be happy, said Trigetius. How, when he cannot obtain the thing he longs for? Yet a human can live happily if he lives according to that part of the soul that ought to rule in a human. Therefore he can find the truth. Or else let him restrain himself and not desire the truth, lest when he cannot reach it he necessarily be miserable. Licentius answered, No, this is precisely the human being's happiness, to seek the truth perfectly, that is, to reach the end beyond which one cannot go. Whoever seeks truth as earnestly as a human can and should, even if he doesn't find it, is happy, because he does everything he was born to do. If discovery is lacking, it is only because nature didn't grant it. Finally, since a human must be either happy or miserable, isn't it madness to call miserable the person who day and night presses on, as much as he can, to investigate the truth? He will be happy then, and that earlier definition helps me even more. If the happy person is the one who lives according to the ruling part of the soul, and that part is called reason, doesn't the person who seeks truth perfectly live according to reason? If denying that would be absurd, why do we hesitate to say a person is happy by the very search for truth? Trigetius said, "To me, anyone who errs neither lives according to reason nor is happy at all, and the one who always seeks and never finds errs. So you have to show one of two things, either that someone can be both erring and happy, or that someone who never finds what he seeks is not erring." Licentius replied, "A happy person cannot be erring." After a long pause, he added, "Nor does one err while seeking, because to avoid error, he seeks perfectly." Tragedius said, "He seeks to avoid error, yes, but he errs when he does not find. And you thought it would help you that he doesn't want to err, as if no one errs unwillingly, or as if anyone ever errs except unwillingly." I said, since Licentius hesitated, "You need to define what error is, then you'll more easily see its boundaries, now that you've gone deeply into it." Licentius said, "I'm not fit to define much, though it's easier to define error than to put an end to it." Trigetius said, "I'll define it, that's easy for me, not because of my talent, but because I have a great cause. Error is to be always seeking and never finding." Licentius said, "If I could easily refute even that definition, I would not have failed my case by now. But since the matter is hard, or at least seems so to me, let me ask that we defer the question until tomorrow. If I can't find an answer today, I'll turn it over in my mind carefully." I thought it should be granted, and the others didn't object. We got up to walk. As we chatted about many things, he was absorbed in thought. When he realized it was fruitless, he chose to relax his mind and join our conversation. As evening approached, they wanted to return to the same contest, but I imposed a limit and persuaded them to put it off to another day, then to the baths. The next day, after we sat down, I said, "Bring forward what you began yesterday." Licentius said, we put off the debate at my request, I think, because defining error was very difficult for me." "Here," I said, "you are not in error, which I gladly wish as a good omen for the rest. Now listen to what I would have said yesterday if you hadn't intervened. Error seems to me to be taking the false as the true. No one falls into this who always thinks truth must be sought. For the one who approves nothing cannot approve the false, therefore he cannot err. And he can quite easily be happy. Not to go far, if we could live as we did yesterday, day after day, I see no reason to doubt we should be called happy. For we lived in great peace of mind, freeing our souls from every stain of the body, far from the fires of desire, giving ourselves, so far as a human can, to reason. That is, living according to that divine part of the soul, which we agreed yesterday is the happy life. And, as I think, we discovered nothing, we only sought the truth. Therefore, even if he cannot find it, a person can reach a happy life by the search for truth alone, and see how easily your definition is excluded by common understanding. You said error is always seeking and never finding. But suppose someone seeks nothing, and when asked, for example, whether it is day, immediately and rashly says it is night. Doesn't he seem to you to err? Your definition didn't include this most savage form of error. Or suppose it even includes some not erring. Could any definition be worse? Imagine a man setting out for Alexandria by the right road. You wouldn't call him erring, would you? What if on that same road he's delayed by various obstacles, and before arriving dies on the way? Did he not always seek and never find? And yet he didn't err. He was not always seeking, Tragedius said. "You speak rightly," said Licentius, "and you give a good reminder. That shows your definition is irrelevant. I did not say happy is the one who always seeks truth, which isn't even possible, first because a human is not always, and next because from the time he begins to exist, he cannot at once seek truth. Age prevents it. Or if you insist on saying always, meaning he lets no time pass once he's able to seek, then we must return to Alexandria. Suppose someone, from the moment age or business allows him to travel, starts down that road, never leaves it, and, as I said, dies before arriving. You would be much mistaken to say he erred, even though he sought at every time he could, and still did not find what he was going toward. Therefore, if my description is true, then by it the one who seeks perfectly, though he does not find, does not err, and is happy for this reason. He lives according to reason. Your definition both fails, and even if it didn't, I needn't care if my own definition is enough to make my case. So why isn't our question settled yet? Tragedius said, "Do you grant that wisdom is the straight road of life?" "I do, without doubt," Licentius said, "but I want you to define wisdom so I may know if we see it the same way." Tragedius said, "Wasn't it defined enough by your last answer? Isn't wisdom rightly called the straight road of life?" "Nothing seems to me more laughable than that definition," Licentius said. "Perhaps," Tragedius replied, "but please go step by step, so reason comes before your laughter. Nothing is uglier than laughing at what deserves to be laughed at. Don't you admit that death is contrary to life?" "I admit it." "Then no road seems more a road of life than the one by which someone goes in order not to fall into death. If a traveler, avoiding a side road said to be beset by bandits, goes straight, and thus escapes death, did he not follow a road of life, and a straight one? And do we call that wisdom? So not every straight road of life is wisdom. I granted it is a road of life, but not the only one. A definition shouldn't include what doesn't belong. So define again, if you please, what you think wisdom is." After a long silence, he said, "Here, I'll define it again, unless you've decided never to finish. Wisdom is the straight road that leads to truth." Licentius said, "This too is easily refuted when, in Virgil, Aeneas's mother says, 'Go on and set your steps where the road leads you.' He followed that road and reached what was said, that is, the truth of the matter. Try to show, if you like, that every footstep he took can be called wisdom. But I'm foolish even to batter your description like this. It doesn't help my case at all. For you have said that wisdom is not truth itself, but the road that leads to it. Therefore, whoever uses this road uses wisdom, and whoever uses wisdom must be wise. Then the one who seeks truth perfectly is wise, even if he hasn't yet reached it. For what road leads to truth better than diligent investigation? Using this one road, he is already wise, and no wise person is miserable, while every human is either miserable or happy. Therefore, not only discovery but investigation itself makes a person happy. Tragedius smiled and said, "Serves me right for confidently agreeing with an opponent on something not necessary. As if I were some great definer, or thought anything more superfluous in argument than definitions. Where would it end if I in turn demanded you define something else, then demanded that you define each word of that definition, and then each of the consequences one by one, pretending I understood nothing? What would I not have the right to force you to define if you have the right to demand a definition of wisdom from me? What term did nature make clearer to our minds than wisdom? And yet somehow, once the very notion leaves the harbor of our minds and hoists the sails of words, 1,000 shipwrecks of quibbles rush upon us, so either don't ask for a definition of wisdom, or let our judge take up her defense. Since night hindered our writing and I saw a big topic rising again from the start, I put it off to another day. We had begun to debate when the sun was already declining, and nearly the whole day had been spent arranging farm affairs and reviewing the first book of Virgil. At daybreak, because we had arranged for plenty of leisure, we took up the matter at once. I said, "Yesterday, Trigetius, you asked me to step down from judging to defend wisdom, as if wisdom would allow an adversary in your conversation, or need any defense at all. You aren't disputing about wisdom itself, since you both desire it. You're only asking what wisdom is, and even if you think you failed to define it, you shouldn't abandon the rest of your case. From me, you will get only a definition of wisdom, not mine, nor new but ancient, which I'm surprised you don't recall. Wisdom is the knowledge of human and divine things." At this, Licentius, whom I thought would struggle for something to say, immediately replied, "Then why, I ask, don't we call a certain most immoral man wise? You know the one I mean, that Albasarius in Carthage, who for many years gave astonishingly accurate answers to those who consulted him. I could list countless examples, but it's enough that those present know of them. Didn't he, when a spoon was missing from your house, and at your order I asked him, name not only what was being sought, but even whose it was and where it was hidden, and that quickly and truly. And I was there when a boy who was carrying coins stole a certain portion on the way. Albasarius demanded that they all be counted and forced the boy before our eyes to return the ones he had taken, before Albasarius had even seen the coins or heard from us how many were brought. And didn't we hear from you that a very learned and famous man, Flaxianus, used to marvel at him? When Flaxianus had been negotiating to buy a farm, he put the matter to that divine man to see if he could say what he had been doing, and Albasarius immediately named not only the kind of business, but, amazingly to Flacianus, even the name of the farm, which was so odd that scarcely even Flacianus himself remembered it. I can't speak of this without amazement. When our friend and your student tried to bait Albasarius and demanded rudely that he tell what he was silently thinking, Albasarius answered that he was turning over a verse of Virgil. The man was stunned and couldn't deny it. Then Albasarius pressed him to say which verse, and although Albasarius had scarcely passed a grammar school, he boldly and with ease recited the very line. Were these not human matters he was consulted about, or did he give such certain and true answers without knowledge of divine things? Both denials are absurd. Human affairs are the affairs of humans, like silver, coins, a farm, and even someone's thought. And what are divine things, if not the things by which divination comes to a man? If we grant the definition that wisdom is knowledge of human and divine things, then Albasarius was wise. Tragedius replied, First, I don't call it knowledge, when the one who professes it sometimes makes mistakes. Knowledge concerns things grasped, and grasped so firmly that one never errs in it, nor wavers under any pressure. So some philosophers rightly say it can be found only in the wise man, who must not only have what he holds and follows, but hold it unshaken. We know that the man you mentioned often said false things, not only by others' reports, but from my own experience present there. Shall I call knowing the one who often lied, when I would not call it knowing even if he had hesitantly told the truth? Take this as said about soothsayers, augurs, astrologers, and interpreters of dreams. Bring me someone in that line of work who never doubted his answers and never gave a false one. As for prophets who speak with another's mind, I need not labor about them. Second, even if I concede that human things are our affairs, do you think anything is ours that chance can give or take away? And when we say knowledge of human things, do we mean knowing how many farms we have, how much gold or silver, or what verse of another poet we happen to be thinking of? No, knowledge of human things is to know the light of prudence, the beauty of temperance, the strength of courage, the holiness of justice. These are the things we dare to call truly ours without fear of fortune. If Albasarius had learned these, he would never, believe me, have lived so shamefully and dissolutely. And as for telling which verse someone had in mind, this too I don't count among our true possessions. Not that I deny that honorable studies belong in some way to the wealth of our mind, but reciting another man's verse is allowed even to the most uneducated. When such things come into our memory, it's no wonder if they can be sensed by certain animals of the air, those cheap spirits whom people call demons, who may surpass us in sharpness and fineness of sensation, though not in reason, and do so in a way hidden from our senses. We don't set a bee above a human just because by some keen sense she can find the honey that we've set out. I would rather that Albasarius, when asked by someone who wanted to learn, had taught the meters themselves, or, forced by one of his consultants about a matter put to him on the spot, had composed his own verses. You often said that same learned Flacianus mocked that kind of divination with lofty scorn, assigning it to some petty little spirit by whose breath Albasarius was prompted or inflated to give his answers. Flacianus would ask those who marveled at such things whether Albasarius could teach grammar or music or geometry, and anyone who knew him confessed he was most ignorant of all that. In short, he urged people who had learned such disciplines to prefer their own minds without hesitation to that divination, and to work on training and supporting their minds with the studies by which we may leap beyond that airy nature of invisible spirits and soar above it. Now, since all agree that divine things are much better and more august than human ones, how could he attain them when he didn't know what he himself was? Do you think the stars we daily behold are anything great compared to the truest and most hidden God, whom perhaps only rarely the mind can touch and no bodily sense at all? The stars are right before our eyes. They are not those divine things which wisdom alone claims to know, and all the other stuff that such diviners use for vain show or profit is surely cheaper than the stars. Therefore, Albasarius did not share in the knowledge of human and divine things, and your attack on our definition fails. Finally, since whatever is not included under human and divine things we should consider least and altogether despise, tell me, in what things does your wise person seek truth? In divine things, Licentius said, for virtue in a human is without doubt divine. So did Albasarius already know the very divine things your wise man will always be seeking? Licentius answered, he knew divine things, but not the ones the wise should seek to grant him divination while denying him divine things, whence divination gets its name, would overturn all our ways of speaking. So, if I'm not mistaken, your definition included something that doesn't belong to wisdom. Trigetius said, let the one who offered that definition defend it if he likes. For now I want you to answer so that we can finally reach the point. Licentius said, here I am. Do you grant that Albasarius knew the truth? I do. Then he was better than your wise man. Not at all, Licentius said, for the kind of truth the wise man seeks is such that not only that raving fortune-teller, but not even the wise man himself, while living in this body, can fully attain it, and yet it is so excellent that it is far better always to seek this than to find that other. I must fall back, said Trigetius, on that definition in a narrower form, if the earlier one seemed faulty to you because it included someone we cannot call wise. What if we say, wisdom is the knowledge of human and divine things that pertain to the happy life? That too is wisdom, Licentius said, but not the only wisdom. So the first definition took in what didn't belong, while this one abandons what does belong. The first can be accused of greed, the second of stupidity. Let me put my view in a definition. Wisdom is the knowledge and the diligent search of human and divine things that pertain to the happy life. If you divide this, the first part, the knowledge, belongs to God. The second, searching, belongs to humans. By the first, God is happy. By the second, the human is happy. Trigetius said, I wonder how you can claim your wise man isn't wasting his effort. How is he wasting it? Licentius answered. When he earns such a great reward, by the very fact that he seeks, he is wise, and by being wise he is happy. He frees his mind as much as he can from all the wrappings of the body, and gathers himself into himself. He does not let himself be torn by desires, but keeps himself always calmly intent upon himself and upon God. Thus even here he enjoys reason, which we agreed is the happy life, and at the end of life he will be found prepared to gain what he has longed for, so that he may rightly enjoy divine blessedness, having first enjoyed human blessedness. Then I said, when Trigetius searched long for a reply, Licentius, I don't think he'll lack arguments if we let him keep searching at leisure. He has never been at a loss for answers. At the start, he himself raised the question of the happy life, and since only the wise can be happy, for even fools admit that folly is miserable, he said that the wise person must be perfect, and that the person who is still seeking what the truth is not perfect, therefore not happy. When you opposed him with the weight of authority, and troubled him a bit by Cicero's name, he quickly recovered and leaped up again to the height of freedom with a noble boldness. He asked you whether a seeker is perfect, so that, if you admitted he was not, he might return to our first point, and show, if he could, by that definition, that the perfect human is the one who governs his life by the law of the mind, and therefore since no one can be happy unless perfect. But when you carefully untied that noose faster than I expected and said that the perfect human is the one who seeks truth most diligently, and when you fought more boldly and openly with the very definition by which we had said the happy life is that which is lived according to reason, he clearly paid you back. He seized your stronghold, and if you had been driven from it, you would have lost the whole cause, unless the truce of a delay had restored you. Where did the academics, whose view you defend, place their citadel, if not in the definition of error. If that had not returned to your mind at night, perhaps in a dream, you would have had nothing to answer. After that, we came to the definition of wisdom, which you tried to undermine with such cleverness, stealing in a way that not even your helper Albasarius could have detected how vigorously he resisted you, how nearly he wrapped you up and pressed you down, until you finally protected yourself with a new definition, saying human wisdom is the search for truth, from which, because of the mind's tranquility, the happy life results. He won't answer that position, especially if he asks to be granted the rest of the day to reply. But let's not make this too long. The matter has been handled enough for our purpose. A few words could have ended it, had I not wanted to exercise you and test your strength and eagerness, which I care about very much. Since I had set myself to urge you strongly to seek the truth, I wanted to find out how much you valued it. You've all valued it so highly that I could not wish for more, for since we want to be happy, and whether this can happen only by finding truth or only by diligently seeking it, then, putting all other things aside, if we want to be happy, we must search for it. So now, as I said, let's end this discussion and send the written account, above all to your father Licentius, whose mind I am now sure is entirely on philosophy. I still wonder what fortune will allow him to receive. He will be set on fire even more when he learns, not only by hearing but by reading, that you are already intent on living this way with me. And if, as I think, the academics please you, prepare stronger powers to defend them, for I intend to summon them to trial. With that said, lunch was announced to be ready, and we got up. Thank you for listening to this translation of Book 1 of Augustine's Against the Skeptics, presented by Augustinus Vox. To experience this work reimagined as an introspective 1980s rock ballad cycle, exploring doubt, reason, and the search for truth, please be sure to check out the corresponding albums by Augustinus Vox and Sapientiae Lux, also entitled Against the Skeptics. Augustinus Vox is a restless heart project that reimagines Augustine's writings in the voices of antiquity through the power of 1980s rock, bringing ancient wisdom to modern ears through music, translations, and creative exploration. To learn more, please visit augustinusvox.com